and former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel. Senator Gravel, for those who may not be familiar with your past, 2 terms U.S. Senate from Alaska, you played a role in the fight to cut off money for the Vietnam War. What would be your advice, Senator, for the elected officials on this stage who are at a conflict, opposed to the conflict, but also feel the need to keep on funding the conflict?
Well, first off, understand that this war was lost the day that George Bush invaded Iraq on a fraudulent basis. Understand that. Now, with respect to what's going on in the Congress, I'm really embarrassed. So we passed, and the media is in a frenzy right today with what has been passed. What has been passed? George Bush communicated over a year ago that he would not get out of Iraq until he left office. Do we not believe him? We need to find another way. That's where I really would like to sit down with Pelosi and with Reid, and I would hope the other senators would focus on how do you get out? You pass the law, not a resolution, a law, making it a felony to stay there. And I'll give you the text of it. And if you're worried about filibuster, here's what you do tactically. They can pass it in the House. We got the votes there. In the Senate, let them filibuster it. And let Reid call up at 12 o'clock every day to have a cloture vote and let the American people see clearly who's keeping the war going and who's not. And that's just the beginning of the tactic if they're tough enough to do it.
Senator Gravel, at a forum earlier this year, I want to get this right, you said it doesn't matter whether you are elected president or not, so then why are you here tonight? Shouldn't debates be for candidates who are in the race to win the race?
Ryan, you're right, I made that statement, but that's before I had a chance to stand with them a couple, 3 times. It's like going into the Senate. You know, the first time you get there, you're all excited, my God, how did I ever get here? Then about 6 months later, you say, how the hell did the rest of them get here? And I got to tell you, after standing up with them, some of these people frighten me. They frighten me. When you have mainline candidates that turn around and say that there's nothing off the table with respect to Iran, that's code for using nukes, nuclear devices. I got to tell you, I'm President of the United States. There will be no preemptive wars with nuclear devices. To my mind, it's immoral, and it's been immoral for the last 50 years as part of American foreign policy.
Let's use a little moderator discretion here. Senator Gravel, that's a weighty charge. Who on this stage exactly tonight worries you so much?
Well, I would say the top-tier ones. The top-tier ones. They've made statements. Oh, Joe, I'll include you, too. You have a certain arrogance. You want to tell the Iraqis how to run their country. I got to tell you, we should just plain get out. Just plain get out. It's their country. They're asking us to leave, and we insist on staying there. And why not get out? What harm is it going to do? Oh, you hear the statement, well, my God, the soldiers will have died in vain. The entire deaths of Vietnam died in vain. And they're dying in vain right this very second. You know what's worse than a soldier dying in vain? Is more soldiers dying in vain. That's what's worse.
The next question is a short answer question, 1 sentence, and I'm going to ask each of you, beginning with Senator Gravel. This is from Paula in Conway, South Carolina. What is the most significant political or professional mistake you have made in the past 4 years, and what, if anything, did you learn from this mistake which makes you a better candidate? And make the sentence no longer than 20 seconds, okay? Senator Gravel.
I've just grown up. I'm the senior statesman on here, and I was beginning to feel like a potted plant standing over here. But let me point out to you, in 1 sentence, you know, I won't hold their youth and inexperience against them.
Thank you, sir. Representative Kucinich.
Senator Gravel, same question. Other than Iraq, 3 most important enemies to the United States.
We have no important enemies. What we need to do is to begin to deal with the rest of the world as equals, and we don't do that. We spend more as a nation on defense than all the rest of the world put together. Who are we afraid of? Who are you afraid of, Brian? I'm not. And Iraq has never been a threat to us. We invaded them. I mean, it is unbelievable. The military-industrial complex not only controls our government, lock, stock, and barrel, but they control our culture.
Senator Gravel, your 2 terms in the Senate representing Alaska sat on top of course, a huge reserve of oil. With the French system as the model, Is the United States, in your view, woefully behind in its use of nuclear energy?
No, not at all. I think there had to be a maturation process, and I'm the one that started the nuclear critique in this country. I'm also the one that denied the boots on the ground for George Bush today when I filibustered the end of the draft. And I'm also the one that brought about the Alaska pipeline by one vote in the Congress. So when you ask about the energy issues or the other issues, let me just tell you, I want to answer the question on the war and on what's going on. We are mischaracterizing terrorism. Terrorism has been with civilization from the beginning, and it will be there till the end. We're going to be as successful fighting terrorism as we are fighting drugs with a war. It doesn't work. What you have to do is to begin to change the whole foreign policy. The Republicans who are charging Democrats about not going for the defense of this country, my God, this invasion brought about more terrorists. Osama bin Laden must have been rolling in his blankets,
Senator,
how happy he was over our invading Iraq.
Time has expired. Senator Gravel, 30 seconds, please.
No, with respect to Iran, we've sanctioned them for 26 years. We scared the bejesus out of them when the president says they're evil. Well, you know something? These things don't work. They don't work. We need to recognize them. And you know something? Who is the greatest violator of the Non-Proliferation Treaty? The United States of America. We signed a pledge that we would begin to disarm, and we're not doing it. We're expanding our nukes. Who the hell are we going to nuke?
Senator,
Tell me, Barack, who are you want to nuke?
I'm not planning to nuke anybody right now, Mike. I promise you.
Good. We're safe there for a while.
Senators both, thank you.
Let's start across the stage and go to Mike Gravel. Senator, why don't we begin with you, and then we'll go down the line.
Like Lee Iacocca said, I'm back from the past, a new leader. My name is Mike Gravel, and I'm running for President of the United States for real.
Senator Gravel, I know you've been outspoken on all of these issues. Where, very briefly, do you disagree with these other Democratic candidates?
Totally. It's just that simple. 4 of these people here will say that it's George Bush's war. It was facilitated by the Democrats. They brought the resolution up. One of them co-authored it here, standing here. And so it's sure it's George Bush's war, but it's a Democrats' war also. Now, do you want to end it? You're concerned about what's going to happen after we withdraw? Well, remember Vietnam. All the dominoes are going to fall. Southeast Asia is going to go communist. Well, how do we know what will happen? I do know this, that the insurgency is successful because the population sustains that insurgency, period.
Senator Gravel, do you think someone who voted to authorize the president to go to war should be president of the United States?
Not at all, because it's a moral criteria. And there's information coming out. Senator Durbin, Mr. Strum in his book, that really points out that these people knew that there was 2 sets of intelligence going on at the same time. And they made a political decision to vote the way they voted. A political decision that cost, stop and think, we have killed more Americans than was done on the 11th of September. More Americans died because of their decision. That disqualifies them for president. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that they don't have moral judgment. And that's very important when you become president.
And I want you to raise your hand if you believe English should be the official language of the United States. The only hand I see is Senator Gravel.
Yeah, we speak English. That doesn't mean we can't encourage other languages. I speak French and English. And people speak Spanish and English. But the official language of the United States of America is English.
Let me just do a show of hands. If you think it's time to get rid of the don't ask, don't tell policy in the U.S. military, raise your hand.
Should have been gotten rid of 20 years ago.
Senator Gravel, if you are elected president, how, if at all, would you use former President Bill Clinton in your administration?
How would I use it? Well, I'd send him as a roving ambassador around the world. He'd be good. He could take his wife with him. He'll still be in the Senate. But, you know, But I'd be careful with the president, former president, because I know he wimped out with respect to gays in the military. I had only wished that he had been like Harry Truman, who stood up to Omar Bradley when he integrated the services, which made possible for Colin Powell to now stare down the President of the United States when the President should have demanded immediate integration. That's what can we do? But under supervision, I think he'll do okay.
Senator Gravel?
Yeah, well, I joined him on the carbon tax, and of course that will raise the price of gasoline. Let's be candid about that. There's nothing I would do as president to lower the price of gasoline right now. We Americans have to grow up. If we want to get off of the dependency in the Middle East, we have to own up to the problem. These things cost money. They're controlling our society. And the sooner we stop fighting these wars, here, stop and think. You only see $3. Just watch those wheels turn. There's another $4, which is what we spend to keep American troops around the world to keep the price. So you're paying more than $7 a gallon. You just don't know it.
Senator Gravel, you served in the military during the Korean War. Have you had any experiences with the Veterans Affairs Department as a veteran yourself?
Very good. I get my meds from the VA, so I know the situation quite well.
So you're satisfied or unsatisfied?
I'm satisfied, very much so, and I think they do a good job. But I think it's really somewhat appalling because the government has always waged war against the veterans. And I would suggest that Senator Obama, who's on the committee, did they do any oversight work to find out before they read in the Washington Post that there was a scandal up the street at Walter Reed?
Right.
I mean, what about that? Did they all get informed of that, or did you know it before?
Well, on a little bit of a lighter note, I spent last summer in Germany with a family whose oldest son was completing his one-year mandatory service to his country. I was wondering if you think we should have that, and if so, how do you plan to make it happen?
All right, Senator Gravel, let me ask you that question.
And obviously, I filibustered and forced the end of the draft. I don't think we need it. If you want to volunteer for the military, you're entitled to do it. I would like to see a voluntary program where young people would have an opportunity to render public service, whether it's in the military, whether it's the Peace Corps, whether it's the AmeriCorps, all of the above. And then for every year that you serve, we'll give you 4 years of school free. That will give you an incentive to move forward and do something about education in this country.
The question is, Democrats have vowed to weed out corruption in the federal government. A major source of corruption for both Democrats and Republicans are bribes in spending bills, sometimes referred to as earmarks. Would you vow, if elected president, to veto all bills containing earmarks? And Wolf, of course, earmarks the pork spending that sometimes gets added to legislation without anybody really knowing about it.
Is it time to do away with these earmarks?
Totally. It's abominable. And the only way you're going to get rid of it is to give the president the line item veto. And of course, they're not going to give the president line item veto. What we need to do is change the entire tax structure. I want to point out that the Comptroller General of the United States invited all the presidential candidates to come in for a briefing. I went in for a briefing. He said there was only 2 other people that came in for a briefing. What the briefing he told us is that we have a fiscal gap on the order of $50 trillion. And you're hearing all this money is going to be spent to do all these great things? My God, don't believe a word of it. Follow the money. You can't get all this money coming at you, millions of dollars from all the special interests, and think that they're now going to deal with solving the problems with special interests. Won't happen.
Senator Clinton?
Well, I think it's important to remember that 6 years ago we had a balanced budget and a surplus. And we did that the old-fashioned way by cutting spending and raising revenues. There is no free lunch. We're going to have to do that hard work again. Now, my point is, when it comes to the tax questions that were asked, the benefits from the Bush tax cuts have gone disproportionately to a very small percentage of Americans. And 10% of Americans have realized about 50% of the increase in wealth that has happened in this country in the last 6 years. We need to deal with the burden on the middle class. The alternative minimum tax has to be reformed, hopefully eventually eliminated. But I think it's important to point out that we have done this before, not in ancient history, but within our memory, and we can do it again once we have a Democratic president.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to go back to Jennifer in a second, but I know Congressman Kucinich really wants to weigh in.
We've been raiding the Social Security Trust Fund to $200 million a year, and they're all involved in this. Now, what do they say about it? You balance the budget by raiding the Social Security Fund of $200 million a year, and they're doing it now.
Very quickly, Senator Gravel and then Senator Dodd, but very quickly, your top priority?
Top priority is to turn to these people and say they're part of the leadership right now in the Congress. They could end the war if they want to. All they got to do is show the leadership, and they'll
Senator
qualify
Dodd, very
them to be
quickly, we
president.
got 5.
In 1903, the noted intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois said, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line." Is race still the most intractable issue in America? And especially, I might add, in light of today's U.S. Supreme Court decision, which struck down the use of race as a factor in K through 12.
First off, let me thank the organizers. This is the fairest debate or forum that we've had thus far this year. Let me add that racism was here with us at the beginning of this country. It was here in the last century, and it's going to be with us in the 21st century. And one of the areas that touches me the most and enrages me the most is our war on drugs that this country has been putting forth for the last generation. In 1972, we had 179,000 human beings in jail in this country. Today, it's 2.3 million, and 70% of them are black African Americans. And I hope my colleagues will join me in standing up and saying, like FDR did with Prohibition, we'll do away with that. And FDR did it. And if I'm president, I'll do away with the war on drugs, which does nothing but savage our inner cities and put our children at risk. There's no reason for this. There's not an American that doesn't understand the culture and the understanding that Prohibition was a failure. And so we repeat it again, like we repeated Iraq after we had the failure of Vietnam. When will we learn? When will we learn that the issue of drugs is a public health issue? Addiction is a public health issue, not a criminal issue where we throw people in jail and criminalize them to no advancement to the people. And if there's one group of people in this country that needs to face up to that problem, and we have to face up to it, and that is the African American community.
Education and poverty. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2006, the unemployment rate of black high school graduates was 33% higher than an unemployment rate for white high school dropouts. To what do you attribute this inequity which keeps many black families locked in the grip of poverty?
Dennis, you're a little too modest on that. I think we can cut a little more than 15%. Very much so. Stop and think what the opportunity costs. Now, you have heard these nostrums before. I've been watching your heads. You're nodding on all the programs. You've heard it 10 years ago. You've heard it 20 years ago. Why doesn't it change? The Democratic Party hasn't done appreciably better than the Republican Party in solving these problems. It has to be solved by the people, not by your leaders. Stop and think. When he's talking about the money we're squandering, 21 million Americans could have a 4-year college scholarship for the money we've squandered in Iraq. 7.6 million teachers could have been hired last year if we weren't squandering this money. Now, how do you think we got into this problem? The people on this stage, like the rest of us, are all guilty, and very guilty, and we should recognize that because there is linkage.
Thank you, Tavis. Good evening, Governor. Good evening, candidates. I'm sure you'll agree there are a lot of beautiful young people out here in the audience today, and we're very pleased to be here at Howard University. So you can imagine how disturbed we were to find out from the Centers for Disease Control that African Americans are 17% of all American teenagers. They are 69% of the population of teenagers diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. Governor and what is the plan to stop and to protect these young people from this scourge?
I touched on it earlier. The scourge of our present society, particularly in the African American community, is the war on drugs. I'll repeat it again as a challenge to my colleagues on this stage that they really want to do something about the inner cities, if they really want to do something about what's happening to the health of the African American community, it's time to end this war. There's no reason to continue it in the slightest. All it does is create criminals out of people who are not criminals. Education, yes. Health care, yes. But understand that the health care that we're talking about, by and large, is going backwards. Going backwards. We're subsidizing the insurance companies, and all the plans that I've heard of, except Dennis's, is a continued subsidization of the insurance companies. Please, put pressure on these people to step up and end this war on drugs, which is ravaging your community.
Senator, thank you. Senator Dodd.
This week, billionaire Warren Buffett said that the very wealthy aren't taxed nearly enough. In fact, he noted that he's taxed at a lower rate than some of his employees who earn much less. Do you agree that the rich aren't paying their fair share of taxes? And if so, what would you do about it?
I want to say that none of you are going to live in your lifetime to see our system of taxation changed based upon what you've heard here. I was 8 years on the Finance Committee. None of them have served on that committee. And I'll tell you, the code stands that high, and there's not a human being alive that understands it. And it's with Democrats, with Republicans, they take care of the people. You think it's an accident that all of a sudden we wake up that the wealthy aren't paying a fair share? The only way they're going to pay a fair share is wipe out the income tax. It is corrupt. It's corrupting our society. And begin to put in place a tax that everybody will know what everybody's paying. And that's a retail sales tax. And you can make it as progressive as you want. Keep in mind, a tax where everybody will know what everybody is paying.
Senator Gravel,
you won't see it with this.
Congressman, would you support a federal law guaranteeing the right to return to New Orleans and other Gulf regions devastated by Hurricane Katrina based on the United Nations human rights standards governing the internal displacement of citizens?
What happened?
Yes, and just keep in mind, if we weren't squandering our treasure on this terrible war that we didn't have to start, we would have 4 million housing units available, and a good portion of them could go to Katrina residents.
A lot of Americans are concerned with outsourcing of U.S. jobs. Most corporations, I think it's fair to say, don't share that concern. In fact, they argue that we're living in a global economy and Americans have to compete in that environment. Which side are you on? And if you agree that outsourcing is a problem, what's your solution?
No, outsourcing is not the problem. What is the problem is our trade agreements that we have that benefit the management and, of course, the shareholders, and have neglected on either side of the issue, whether it's in Mexico or in other countries or the United States. That's the problem that must be addressed. So no, it's not outsourcing, but I would add to it, it's the way all these people want to finance health care on the backs of businesses that make them uncompetitive in the world. That's the part of the problem, and our system of taxation is also part of the problem because it makes us uncompetitive in the world.
The question is about Darfur. This is the second time that our nation has had a chance to do something about genocide in Africa. The first came in Rwanda in 1994 when we did nothing as more than 500,000 people were slaughtered there. What does this country's unwillingness to move aggressively to end the slaughters that take place in Darfur today, what does it say about our claim to moral leadership?
Very simple. If we have a president, he has to have moral judgment. No, Mike, you can't hear me? Or you can hear me now? We have to have a president who has moral judgment. Most of the people on this stage with me do not have that judgment and have proven it by the simple fact of what they've done.
We are up against the clock. My thanks to all. Please.
A change in attitudes of those who are representing the people of America. And part of the reason I don't take PAC money, I don't take federal lobbyist money, is because we've got to get the national interests up front as opposed to the special interests. And that is something that I've got a track record of doing, and I think that is what the American people are looking for in this election. People of both parties as well as independents.
Our next question is for Senator Gravel. Are you a liberal?
I wouldn't use either word. Find a little better than that. We've had Zach ask about change. We're not going to see any change when these people get elected. We've asked about that we're united. We're not united. I'm not united on many of their views. And I want to take on Barack Obama for a minute, who said he doesn't take money from lobbyists. Well, he has 134 bundlers. Now, what does he think that is? And besides that, he has received money from a Robert Wolf, the head of the USB Bank in the United States, who raised $195,000 from this bank, wait a second, who has lobbyists in Washington,
time's up.
and it's a foreign-owned bank.
Senator Obama, I'm going to have to let you respond.
Absolutely. The fact is I don't take PAC money and I don't take lobbyist money. And the bundlers, the reason you know that who is raising money for me, Mike, is because I helped push through a law this past session to disclose that. And that's the kind of leadership that I've shown in the Senate. That's the kind of leadership that I showed when I was a state legislator. And that's the kind of leadership that I'll show as president.
We got to end it. That's the response. That's very much. I'm Gabriel.
I'm Yunmin. And I'm Connie from a refugee camp near Darfur.
Before you answer this question, imagine yourself the parent of one of these children. What action do you commit to that will get these children back home to a safe Darfur and not letting it be yet another empty promise?
Senator Gravel?
Problem goes a little deeper than that. It's because we haven't owned up to our responsibilities to a sense of global governance. And so now you've got a situation with the United States of America, as Joe says, wants to go in, but the African nations don't want us there. What's the message? They're afraid of us. They're flat afraid of us. And if you'll permit me, since I haven't got as much time as the others.
Actually, no, you got to answer just directly the question.
Thank you very much,
seconds.
Anderson.
My name is John. I'm from West Virginia. My question is for Mike Gravel. In one of the previous debates, you said something along the lines of the entire deaths of Vietnam died in vain. How do you expect to win in a country where probably a pretty large chunk of the people voting disagree with that statement and might very well be offended by it? I'd like to know if you plan to defend that statement, or if you're just going to flip-flop. Thanks.
John, why would you think I would flip-flop? I've never flip-flopped before, and I like to question. I don't get very many of them, but I'll just tell you, thank you. Has it been fair thus far? I'll tell you, John, it's a set-up question. Our soldiers died in Vietnam in vain. You can now, John, go to Hanoi and get a Baskin-Robbins ice cream cone. That's what you can do. And now we have most favored nation trade. What did all these people die for? What are they dying for right now in Iraq every single day? Let me tell you, there's only one thing worse than a soldier dying in vain. It's more soldiers dying in vain.
My name is Tony Fuller from Wellston, Ohio, and I was wondering if the candidates feel women should register for the draft when they turn 18. Why or why not?
Senator Gravel?
Well, of course, I want to take credit and admit that I'm the guy that filibustered for 5 months all by myself in the Senate to end the draft in the United States of America. And I'm very proud of that because George Bush does not have the boots on the ground to invade Iran. Thank you.
Do you think should women register?
Well, of course, women should be going to the draft. If we're going to have a draft, they should register also.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Thank you for your answer.
Hi, my name is Cherry Claire. I'm from Baptist, South Carolina. And my question is, who is your favorite teacher and why?
Senator Gravel?
A brother by the name of Edgar Burke, who since deceased, became a priest later. He recognized me as a very failing student because I was dyslexic and couldn't read very well. And so he gave me some attention and taught me to speak. And that's what little chance I get to use it today. Thank you.
Senator Obama?
I'm Mike Green from Lexington, South Carolina, and I was wanting to ask all the nominees whether they would send their kids to public school or private school.
My children went to public school and private school, and I'd recommend that we need a little bit of competition in our system of education. Right now, we have 30% of our children do not graduate from high school. That is abominable, and that's the problem of both parties.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. We're in the Bay Area in my bathroom because this is one of the places where I use compact fluorescent light bulbs. I use these to decrease my personal energy use, and I hear politicians talking about alternative energies as a way to decrease our energy impact as a whole. But my question for you is, how is the United States going to decrease its energy consumption in the first place? In other words, how will your policies influence Americans rather than just using special light bulbs to do this?
Senator Gravel, how do you get Americans to conserve?
Very simple. Change our tax structure. Have a fair tax where people are taxed on what they spend rather than what they earn. And our tax system is totally corrupt right now. And so if we now have a retail sales tax, you'll take this nation of ours from a consuming nation to a savings nation. And that's the most significant thing we can do to alter climate change.
How many people here took a private jet or a chartered jet to get here tonight? You're not sure? Yesterday. Okay, okay. Senator Gravel, what was that? You took the train?
I took the train. And I took the bus.
Okay.
And maybe one of these will give me a ride someday.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Smith. And I'm Ashanti Wilkins, and we're from Pennsylvania. And my question is to all the candidates is regarding the national minimum wage. Congress seems to never have a problem when it comes time to give themselves a raise. But when it came time to increase the minimum wage, they had a problem. My question to the candidate, if you're elected to serve, would you be willing to do this service for the next 4 years and be paid the national minimum wage?
So, pretty simple, yes or no. Minimum wage, by the way, goes up tomorrow to $6.55. In 2009, it'll be $7.25. Senator Gravel, would you work for the minimum wage?
Oh, yes, I would, but I'd say that we don't need a minimum wage. We need a living wage. We don't have that in this country, regardless of what they pass.
Senator Dodd.
Hi, my name is Chris Nolan, and I'm a Democratic precinct committeeman from Mundelein, Illinois. And my question is for Hillary Clinton. With Bush, Clinton, and Bush again serving as the last 3 presidents, how would electing you, a Clinton, constitute the type of change in Washington so many people in the heartland are yearning for and what your campaign has been talking about? I was also wondering if any of the other candidates had a problem with the same 2 families being in charge of the executive branch of government for 28 consecutive years if Hillary Clinton were to potentially be elected and then re-elected. Good luck, and whoever becomes the nominee, I'll be pulling for you.
Go Democrat!
30 seconds, Senator Gravel, do you have a problem with it?
Oh, yes, I do. A serious problem. The Democratic Party used to stand for the ordinary working man. But the Clintons and the DLC sold out the Democratic Party to Wall Street. Look at where all the money is being raised right now. For Hillary, Obama, and Edwards, it's the hedge funds, it's Wall Street bankers, it's the people who brought you what you have today. Please wake up. Just look at the New York Times of the 17th of July that analyzes where the money's coming from. It comes from the bankers on Wall Street and, of course, hedge funds, which is code for bankers on Wall Street. And they're lock, stock, and barrel in their pockets.
Look, I think every single question we've heard, you see cynicism about the capacity to change this country. And the question for the American people.
My name is Jason Coop, and I am from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And my question is for all of the candidates, and it is intended to lighten up the mood a little bit. I'd like for each of you to look at the candidates to your left and tell the audience one thing you like and one thing you dislike about that particular candidate. And remember, be honest.
Senator Gravel?
I turned to my left, and I like Chris Dodd. I knew his dad. I served with his dad. I do have a difference of opinion with respect to where the money's coming from. I've advocated people follow the money if you want to find out what's going to happen after any one of these individuals are elected. Follow the money because it's politics as usual is what you're seeing.
And now, about Senator Gravel. Didn't he show great courage during the Vietnam War when he exposed what was going on with the Pentagon Papers? Really courageous American. I'm proud that he's up here. Thank you, Senator Gravel.
And former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel, no support registered. Candidates, welcome.
support you.
Not so bad, Senator Gravel.
Thank you for that warm welcome.
Maybe it'll go up after today. So Senator Obama rules out using them against al-Qaeda. You rule out using them against Iran. What's the principal difference there?
Well, that's very good, but under the last 25 years, this nation has continued to expand its nuclear capability. I would say that essentially they're all wrong on this. They're sort of leading up. The administration is cooking the books, the intelligence on Iran. And we're playing into this, and I'm very concerned. I would hope that Congress would pass a resolution saying, no, under no circumstances do you invade Iran. Stop and think, what have they done to us? They're giving us intelligence saying that they're destroying our troops. Well, what about our trying to destabilize their government, which we've been doing for the last 25 years? We destroyed their democracy, and now we're looking at them as an excuse to expand the war, which is the plan the neocons had back in 1997. And so when Democrats buy into the problem of Iran, they just help Vice President Cheney, who should be committed with his recent statement.
So does that mean that Governor Richardson just is wrong when he says that all troops, except for protection of the embassy, can be out by the end of the year? Senator Gravel, do you agree with Governor Richardson?
Him, and I disagree with Joe Biden, and I disagree with Hillary. Well, stop and think. Here, why do we think that we can rule that country? This is American imperialism you're hearing up here, and that hasn't worked, and it will never work. Who are we to tell the Iraqis? We're trying to make them the fall guy, not our stupid mistakes. Oh, it's the Iraqis won't stand up. Tell you what, pull everybody out and turn to the Iranians. Who helped us defeat the Taliban initially? It was the Iranians. So if we don't bring the Iranians to help us, or the Syrians, or the Saudi Arabia, of course it's going to be a disaster. They have more at stake in that area of the world than we do.
So, Senator, you would pull out. Senator Edwards,
and use diplomacy.
And he said, my question is to understand each candidate's view of a personal God. Do they believe that through the power of prayer, disasters like Hurricane Katrina or the Minnesota bridge collapse could have been prevented or lessened? I'd like each of you to answer it.
What I believe in is love, and love implements courage, and courage permits us all to apply the virtues that are important in life. And so you can pray. I was always persuaded by or struck by the fact that many people who pray are the ones who want to go to war, who want to kill fellow human beings. That disturbs me. I think what we need is more love between one human being and another human being, and then we'll find the courage to dispel many of the problems we have in governance. The answer to governance is not up here in the dais. The answer is with the American people and the people of Iowa. That's where the answer is, and I have a proposal, and it's the only one that talks of change. The change is to empower the American people with a national initiative, and my colleagues, with all due respect, don't even understand the principle of the people having the power.
This question is for all the candidates. Unlike many others, I think that candidates may tell the truth, just not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. For example, when advocating position or action, candidates downplay or simply ignore the likely negative side effects. Can you name a major issue where you didn't tell the whole truth and describe what you left out?
Senator Gravel?
Yes, I can tell one issue that they're not living up to. My colleagues have all said that they want public financing.
How about you, though, Senator?
No, I'm part of it, and I'm telling the truth. They can do this right now. There's nothing, and I ask for a pledge from all of them to immediately obey the law we have on the books to use public financing. They can store their money, their millions, for the general election. But right now, in the primaries, why can't they say what they promised and they said therefore? Otherwise, it means there's a little hypocrisy abroad here.
Let me just sum this up. No one on the stage is for merit pay for teachers specifically.
I am.
You are? Okay, thank you.
And George,
can I respond? Can I expand upon that since I've said I'm for merit pay?
Go for it.
Don't leave me hanging.
Okay.
No, stop and think. They're all talking business as usual, politics as usual. this country, we're so proud. We think we're number one. He just gave you a statistic of how bad we are. I'll give you another one. We're 46th in literacy in the world. In the world, 30% of our children do not graduate from high school. What does that mean for the future of this country? And all we get are the same old nostrums that we need competition in education. Stop and think. Here, Spain, Norway, Finland, these countries, they're not the superpower of the world, but they pay for their children from childhood to PhD levels. Why can't Americans put education as the top priority? And you can't do it when you want to expand, as he wants to expand, 100,000 more troops. Who are we going to nuke? Who are we going to fight
Okay,
next?
Senator Gravel, go ahead. Quick questions and then a final question. This is basically a yes/no question. We've seen all this turmoil in the markets over the last couple of weeks caused by the credit crunch and the crisis in the mortgage markets. We saw on Friday the Federal Reserve lowered the discount rate for banks. Should they lower rates for everyone else? Yes or no?
Well, I would say that there's no answer to that question. Just follow the money of the people on this dais and you'll see a response.
You know, presidential biographers are always looking at the turning point in a life, the moment where an ordinary person went on the path to the presidency, the decisive moment. Congressman Kucinich, what's a decisive moment in your life?
The decisive moment in my life came with the insightfulness of realizing that human governance is extremely complex and that representative government is broken. And there's only two venues for change. One is the government, where the problem lies, or the people. And so the people must be equipped as lawmakers, the central power of government, in order to make decisions on all the policy issues that affect their lives, working in partnership with elected government. It's a win-win. The people make the policy decisions, and we then would make the day-to-day operation of government work better.
Senator Gravel, I've listened to you very carefully in this campaign. You were in the Senate.
You're one of the few that has.
You were in the Senate, and you take credit for stopping the draft. If you were a senator right now, what advice would you give your colleagues still in Congress about how they can stop the war, even though they don't have enough votes to stop a debate or to override a veto? What should they do?
Well, the first thing, you stop the debate by voting every single day on cloture. Every day, 20 days, and you'll overcome cloture. The president vetoes the law. It comes back to the Congress, and in the House at noon, every single day, you vote to override the president's veto. And in 40 days, the American people will have weighed in, put the pressure on those. You tell me that the votes aren't there, you go get them by the scruff of the neck. That's what you do. You make them vote.
Senator, are you suggesting that these candidates suspend their campaigns, go back to Washington, and for 40 consecutive days vote on the war?
If it stops the killing, my God, yes, do it.
Tim.
And Tim, you're really missing something. This is fantasy land. We're talking about ending the war. My God, we're just starting a war right today. There was a vote in the Senate today. Joe Lieberman, who authored the Iraq resolution, has authored another resolution, and it is essentially a fig leaf to let George Bush go to war with Iran. And I want to congratulate Biden for voting against it, Dodd for voting against it, and I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it. You're not going to get another shot at this, because what's happened, if this war ensues, we invade, and they're looking for an excuse to do it. And Obama was not even there to vote.
Thank you, Tim. Dozens of cities around the country, including several right here in New England, have been designated as sanctuary cities. These are communities that provide a safe haven for illegal immigrants, where police are told not to involve themselves in immigration matters. Would you allow these cities to ignore the federal law regarding the reporting of illegal immigrants and, in fact, provide sanctuary to these immigrants?
Real fast.
Real fast. This whole nation should be a sanctuary for the war, for the world, and bring the people in. What's going on? We're in fantasy land. We're talking about a problem We're scapegoating the Latinos of our society because we as a society are failing in education, we're failing in health care, we're failing in our crumbling infrastructure, and we're failing by invading countries and spending our treasure. That's what's wrong, and so I'm ashamed as an American to be building a fence on our southern border. That's not the America that I fought for.
Thank you, Senator Gravel. I want to ask Senator Gravel, you talk about running for President of the United States. In 1980, your condo business went bankrupt.
Correct.
In 2004, you filed for personal bankruptcy.
Correct.
Leaving $85,000 in credit bills unpaid. How can someone who did not take care of his business, could not manage his own personal finances, say that he's capable of managing the country?
Well, first off, if you want to make a judgment of who can be the greediest people in the world when they get to public office, you can just look at the people up here. Many of them done very, very well in public office. I left the Senate no better than when I went in. Now, you say the condo business, I'll tell you, Donald Trump has been bankrupt 100 times. So I went bankrupt once in business, and the other, who did I bankrupt? I stuck the credit card companies with $90,000 worth of bills, and they deserved it because I used the money. They deserved it, and I used the money to finance the empowerment of the American people with a national initiative so you can make the laws. Now, Tim, let me just point one thing out. You're asking about special interest.
You've made your point. You've made your point.
I wanted to make a better point.
Let me leave it at that, because I got to give everyone a chance. In the interest of time, is there anybody here from Obama down to Gravel who thinks we should lower the drinking age back to 18?
I think we should lower it to anybody that can go fight and die for this country should be able to drink.
18. Kucinich? Congressman Kucinich? We're going to take a break and come back with our lightning round. 30 seconds to answer each question. We'll be right back.
I never got to the real round.
Would anyone here raise the gasoline tax in order to wean America off of Middle Eastern oil?
First off, let me qualify it. I would ask the Congress, they won't do it, but then I would empower the American people to do it, and that is to put a carbon tax on. If we don't do something drastic, and we can get off of gasoline in 5 years, and we can get off of carbon in 10 years, all we got to do is want to do it, and to put a tax on gasoline permits politicians and bureaucrats to play favorites. You do it right at the lump of coal, and you do it at the gas, and you do it at the oil, and then let it filter through the system properly.
Nuclear power.
Not at all. The solution obviously is wind power. If we manufactured 5 million of these 2.5 meg windmills across the country, we could electrify the entire nation. The entire nation. I'm talking about a transportation system. Why don't we do that? We know this is technology off the shelf. That's why I kept saying we can get off of gasoline in 5 years. We can get off of carbon in 10 years. All we got to want is to do it, and it will take the American people because they can't get that through the Congress.
I want to ask you a simple question. Senator Obama, what is your favorite Bible verse? I want to give everyone a chance on this. If you could just take 10 seconds. Senator Clinton, favorite Bible verse. Senator Gravel.
Most important thing in life is love. That's what empowers courage, and courage implements the rest of our virtues.
I want to ask Allison King for one more question. This, after all, is New Hampshire. She wants to ask you about baseball.
For many here in New England, the answer to this next question may be the most important one you answer tonight. Red Sox or Yankees? Governor Richardson.
Senator Gravel, Yankees, Red Sox.
I'm from New England. I was born in Massachusetts. You have to ask that question.
Edwards.
Red Sox.